Do you know what they say? They say that it requires at least 20 to 40,000 steps when you're doing a photo walk in one day. But what if I tell you a method that you don't have to walk that much? Hi, it's Peter here, and let's get right into the business. Well, I have two problems at the moment. I can't really walk well, or I can, but with these, and when I have these in both of my hands, it's impossible to hold the camera in my hand. So what to do? Well, I can use so-called fishing technique. And let's talk about what fishing technique is and what are the good things about it and if there are any downsides. Let's start. Well, what is fishing technique? You pick a spot, make your composition, and start waiting for something to happen. And sometimes nothing might happen, but you still have a place to photograph something. And if on that particular time nothing happens, you can always come back later if you find a good spot. And when I was standing in front of that mural, love, nothing really happened. So didn't get any really good shots about that. But I know the place and I can come back to it later. Finding the right spot. Of course, you can do fishing technique in any place. For me, at the moment, the best places are if I can sit down. But of course, that restricts me to benches and stuff like that because I cannot carry a chair with me. And I wouldn't say that you should either, even though if you could walk properly and don't have a cast on your leg. Another way for me at the moment is that I could lean on something because I can't put some weight on the left leg too, so it's not a problem as long as it doesn't hurt. So I can do that, but it's going to be a bit tiring if I need to be there for a long time. Of course, it's a good training for my right leg's muscles, of course. That's always the good thing. If you're in a city, look for backgrounds that are simple enough, but something interesting in there. Look for light, some textures, maybe there's an ad in the background or some signs or graffitis, text, whatever you can find that looks interesting in the background. I don't know if that was technically a fishing technique when I was just walking. That was hunting method. But anyways, it's a photograph. I'm very happy to be out here to photograph. I don't know, I've been like a month trying to take one single photograph, so just being out here is great. The whole essential thing is try to look for the background when you are fishing. It's a good way of making the background the way you want, or picking the spot where the background is something that you like. Another good place is to go indoors in a mall, especially when it's cold outside and there is a lot of snow and ice on the outdoors, so it's really hard to walk. If you have some trouble walking, crutches or some other things that prevent you walking long distances, or you know what I mean. Malls can be problematic because most of them are private property, so there might be some restrictions in photography. But you can always try and see what happens. And, railway stations, metro stations, and all those can also be something to look for. But, of course, you need to be careful so that you don't go into very dangerous places. But, of course, if you can't really walk or run, you're vulnerable, and some bad people might spot you and do something bad things. That's always a concern of me after what happened to me in Istanbul, and you can check it out from there. And then there's also the possibility to go into a cafe and sit by the window and have your camera ready and photograph through the glass. That's always one possibility. And that's what I've been doing a little bit here, having a cup of coffee and, looking outdoors and photographing people. After you have found the place, set up your shot. Make the composition very carefully the way you want it. Look for layers. Is there something in the foreground to make some depth to the image? Is the background interesting enough? Double check everything that works in the background. After that, make sure you have the exposure correctly and the focusing correctly. You can use manual on both of these. Fishing technique is a good time to have manual focus and manual exposure if the background is evenly lit. If there's a lot of change in light, then you might want to use some programs like P mode, A mode, or S mode, depending on what you want for your shots. And if the place is really boring and the background is a little bit boring, why not try long shutter speed street photography? You can pan the subject or make the subject a little bit blurry and test different shutter speeds to see which effect you like the best. That's a way to get more interesting images that are visually pleasing, and maybe some motion blur makes it more or not so documentary and not so obvious. So that could be something. I do have a video about long exposure street photographs with the title of that images doesn't have to be sharp, and you can watch them from there. Waiting patiently. The key in this method is that you have to be patient and wait for something to happen. And also be aware it might not happen anywhere. That is the downside. You might spend an hour or more in one place, and that means that you might miss photographs in other places. So it's not the perfect method, but what you can do if you can walk, that it's the best method. You also need to embrace the process of making those images and being out there, and especially for me right now, because I can't just go out and photograph and walk around, just being out there photographing is a really huge thing for me. And also you have learned a lot when you have picked a spot, and if you didn't get this time, go back there and try again, and you will get the image that you had in your mind. And of course the fourth step is to actually make the image. There you need to react quickly. You've been waiting for, maybe even hours, and then when something happens, it's a split of a second, you really need to react and be concentrated on what you're looking for and constantly be aware what's happening around you so that you can really catch that, hopefully even a decisive moment where everything fits into place and you have the keeper. Then let's talk about why fishing technique is a good method. Improved composition. It's a good way to make and practice the good composition because you have all the time to make the composition. And usually if you're walking around and reacting to things that happens, you just have to take the shot and you don't have time to make the composition. But with this method, with fishing method, you can really concentrate on the composition. And it's also a learning thing where you can just, have the camera in front of your eye or even sometimes on a tripod and then just carefully think what's inside the frame and learn while you're doing it. It's a very effective way of making a good compositions. Better control over background. This is something that we street photographers struggle every time, the background, because it is really important to give context to the image, to put the subject in an environment. And that's why we mainly use smaller aperture to get it also sharp. But that also means that it might be getting too cluttered, the background. With this method, you can control it a lot better. Like you can control the composition, which is of course related to this controlling the background. As I already said, find some textures, abstract shapes, light and all that when you're looking for the background for your shot. But it's a good way also learning about the background when you're doing a little bit slower photography. And practicing being patient. This is something that I struggle a lot because I tend to move too much when I'm out there photographing on the streets, going places and not being in one place long enough. I just maybe see something and I settle with the mediocre image, but waiting a little bit longer could be something that I could benefit from this. So sitting around and looking around and looking for possible shots while sitting down is also a good practice to learn how you can get an image in a certain place. If you would be dropped there and you don't know where it is, you need to quickly start thinking that where are all the photographs waiting for you to catch. And this is a very good practice for that. So even though if you don't normally do fishing techniques and if you are able to move like, walking around and no problem, then it's still sometimes just to sit down and observe the scene and do all the preparation for the shot. It kind of slows you down and you start seeing more and not rush into the images every time. But of course, if something happens, then you need to be quick. So it's a little bit both, practicing your patience and practicing your reactions. Are there any downsides? Well, of course, every method has its downside. And this one is, of course, that you miss a lot of shots around you if you're just stuck in one place. But sometimes, like me, I don't have a choice. So I will try to make the best out of every spot that I was in this video. So that's one thing. And if you're practicing fishing techniques, even though you're able to walk normally, then don't be too long at one place. But it's hard to say how long. It depends on the place and what might have happened. If there are lots and lots of people, then maybe a little bit longer. But if there aren't that many people around, maybe a shorter time when the few people come around. But because you don't want to waste time being too long at the same spot. And remember, you can always come back later if you find that the spot is nice, but things didn't happen the way you wanted them to happen.
Go.
And a few tips for these photographs. Why not make a set of images and present them like the deadpan photographers used to present them? Make like 9 photographs from the same spot and make them as a collage type thing. Well, is that a collage? But anyways, this is a grid type presentation. That's one thing. Then one thing that I noticed also is that a wide angle lens could be better on this one because you can't really move and kind of like go closer or go further away. So wide angle lens could be something that you could use on this. But then on the other hand, what about a telephoto lens? Then you can sit and get some pictures from further away. I usually use is a prime lens, but with this maybe a zoom lens could have been better. Now I have used the Ricoh GR, which I use most of the time for my street photographs. And the reason is that I just like the focal length and the ease of use of the camera. And I just noticed one thing. I saw someone with the crutches and I had the camera like this and it was turned off. But he was so quick to take the photograph that I could turn the camera on and I got the shot. As you have probably figured out looking at my images on this particular fishing photo walk, I wasn't really successful. I don't think I have any keepers. But you know, sometimes it's just great to be outdoors and photograph even though you don't have the keepers. And I've been about a month that I haven't taken one single photograph, so it was just a joy just being out here walking in the city and get a few images just to click the shutter. It gives me so much joy. And special thanks to Matti Sulanto, a fellow photographer and a friend who was filming this for me. And don't forget to check out his channel. I'll put the link in the description below. And this was a lot of fun to test something new. I don't really use that much fishing techniques. I'm more of a hunter, to be honest. And I was talking about the deadpan photography. There's a video about that. But hey, thanks for watching and bye for now.